Friends, welcome back. In the previous video, we talked about the concept of object-oriented programming, and we said why it can be a useful thing in programming. In today's video, we're actually going to see how we can do it in Python. The first thing we need to do is to define a class. So if I open my Visual Studio Code here, I go class, and I don't know, for example, we can say we're defining a class, and that class is called phone, for example, right? The first thing we need to do is that we need to define a function. Well, these are not called functions, by the way, in classes. They call them methods. So let's just like follow what they have and just call these method, but it's honestly the same thing as a function. The first thing that we need to do is to define this init method. So you go underscore init, and again underscore. That's the name. It's a standard name, and you have to follow that. It basically initializes the class. So when you define an object, it runs whatever comes inside this thing in here. So the syntax is just like a function. As you see, I've defined init. That's the name. And as I said, like, you have to keep this as init, and the input to the class come here. So the first input always in each of the methods that you design in a class is the self. The self is pointing to the class itself. So when you define an object based on this class, this self says that, hey, I'm pointing to you and I'm talking about you, like this specific object here. So we keep self in here. And so what are some of the features or like inputs that we can use for phone? Let's say price of the phone, for example. Operating system could be iOS or Android, for example, and year, right, when the phone was made. And then you can just go self.price. So whenever like we define whenever we define an object based on this class, this is not how we spell self. This is better. It gets the price value in here, right? We use the example, so don't worry too much about it if it's not 100% clear yet. It doesn't have to have the same name. Like I'll show you here, for example. I can go self dot operating system, for example, that equals OS, and self dot, just call this model, and that's the year, right? So whenever you instantiate this class, right, it has all these three of these in here. Let's see. So if I go here and say my iPhone equals phone, right? And I need to give it three inputs: the price, OS, and then the year, right? So let's say, I don't know, like 999, that's the price. The OS is just gonna go iOS, and the year, let's say it's like 2023. That's it. So if we run this, nothing happens because we don't have an output. So the next question would be, how can we actually print this? Can I just go print iPhone? Like, does it do anything? Let's see. Nope, it's not happy with that. It says, sure, yeah, like I print something, it's a location, memory and stuff, but it's nothing useful. We cannot see anything. So how can we do that? So we can define another method here, and then we can say define, I don't know, like print info of the phone, right? And I'm gonna go print. I'm gonna use f string. I love f strings, by the way. You've said it in the previous examples. So I'm just gonna go the phone price is you remember this, right? Whatever comes in the curly bracket, that's the variable that you want to print, right? I'm gonna go that's self dot price. So the phone price is this, and it was made in self dot model. You cannot use self dot year because like that's not defined. So we have self dot model, right? And oops, what happened? Uh, and then and it runs self dot o square sys, right? Should be good. Uh oh, I forgot to put the self in here. As I said, like whatever method that you define or whatever function that you define here, they need to have the self so it knows what's it pointing at. You know, remember you see like for example this function, this method is only getting self. Like I'm not keep passing price or model or operating system like those inputs to this. The self, it it has all of those information in it, right? So if I go iPhone, that's not how you spell iPhone. I don't know what's wrong with me. If I go iPhone dot print info, right? And let's clear this thing in here and run this. It says the phone price is 999 and it was made in 2023 and it runs on iOS, right? Cool. So this is the basic concept of classes and objects in Python. So this iPhone in here, it's an object. So we instantiate this class, the phone class, with this, syntax in here. So iPhone is an object of phone class, right? That's how we do it. And you can obviously keep adding as many methods as you want. For example, I can go price degradation, for example, right? Like how much the value of the phone drops after, certain amount of time. I'm just gonna give it the self and I'm gonna say this year is 2023. So I'm just gonna go if self dot model. If it's 2023, then print inside the other codes. Just gonna go the phone kept its value, right? But other than that, I'm just gonna say, let's say every year we drop like 10%, for example, just as an example, we can say the phone value has dropped by some percentage, right? And we want to say like every year. So if it's like 2022, then it's like 10%. If it's 2021, then it's like 20%. So I'm just going to go 2023 minus self dot model, right? And then this whole thing times 10, for example, right? And then if I go here and say iPhone dot price degradation, right? And if I clear this in here, and if I run this, it says the phone kept its value. Just put the space here. And so if I change this to, let's say, 21, right? And I run this again, it says the phone value has dropped by 20%. So you can keep adding as many methods as you want. And you can see how like I'm initializing the first thing in here and then like everything is like kind of saved in the self thingy and you can just like keep using those. Let's do something else now. You remember in the previous video we talked about subclasses and how they inherit some features from properties from the main class. Let's do that now. see how we can do that. So we have this phone class, and I want to define another class, and I want to call that iPhone, right? And iPhone is actually subclass of phone, and this is how I'm doing it. You see here, when I was defining phone, it's just like your class. It's not dependent on anything. That's how I use it, right? But here, I'm saying iPhone is a class, and it's a subclass of phone. What it does, it says that I already know everything that you've defined in this class in here. I already know that. But if you want to add more, then go for it. So I don't really need to define, the init method anymore because it's already in the phone class. We can just go def, for example, I don't know, ship info, for example, and I'm just gonna pass in self and say, I don't know, if self.model, again, like everything is in the self because it knows phone, it knows self.model, operating system in here, and self.price. So I'm just going to say if this is 2023, for example, then print, I don't know, for example, this phone uses, what's the latest iPhone uses? I think they called it A17 Pro chip. Else print, just going to use an FS string here, and I'm just going to call that this phone be used as a something chip, right? What's that chip? I think like you were using A16, A15, Bionic stuff. So I'm just gonna go 16 minus 2022 minus self.model. So if it's a 2022 model, then it's gonna be 0 in here, so it's gonna be A16 chip. If it's 2021, then it's gonna be A15 chip. Be just an example here, right? And then here I can say iPhone 15 Pro equals iPhone, which is this class name in here, and I have to pass 3 arguments, right? The first one you can see, it's like the price, OS, and year. So the price, I'm just gonna go $11.99. OS, I'm just gonna go iOS 17, for example, and the year is like 2023, right? And if I go iPhone Pro dot ship info, right? Let's clear this in here and see what happens. It says this phone uses A17 Pro chip. You see, it has everything that we define in this top class in here, and then like we can add this function in here. So that's about this. And now let's do something cool. Let's define another class and call this Samsung, for example. Samsung is also a subclass of phone, so it has everything that we define up there. But I want to do something else. I want to say that you remember how we had like a price degradation thingy? I want to use the same thing. Let's just copy this to save some time. I'm just going to copy that, bring it down here, and put it here. Right? Price tag. And if it's this, then the best. And this time, instead of like for every year by 10%, I'm just going to go 15%. Let's just assume that iPhone holds its values better than Samsung. No offense to Samsung users. Yeah. So what's happening now? These functions, they have the same names. So what happens if I say, I don't know, S23, right, is Samsung. The price is, let's say, 1299. The operating system is Android, and the year, I don't know, let's say 2022, right? If I say S23, S23 dot price degradation, right? What's gonna happen? Is it gonna use this function, or is it gonna use this function in here? Let's see. So if I run this now, it says the phone value has dropped by 15%. That's what we have here, right? So it's actually using this function instead. This is what will be called function overloading or method overloading. So it's kind of overwriting the main function in here. You see, for example, if I call the chip info, it says, okay, I don't know chip info in the phone class, so I'm just going to use this one. But here, we are just like overloading, overwriting the previous function with this. We say, okay, if I was using a Samsung object, then use this formula instead, right? But if I do the same thing, if I go Python 15 Pro dot price degradation and change that to 2022, for example, I'm expecting to see only a 10% degradation, right? Let's see what's gonna happen. So yes, so this is this guy in here, like the last one. It's 10%, and the Samsung one is up here, which is like 15%. It's because when you use, like when you define an object from this class, iPhone class, and then you call the price degradation method on it, it says, okay, I don't have the price degradation method. I'm gonna use whatever comes in the main class, which is this one in here, right? But we overloaded that function in this object in here, right? In the S23, which is from this class. So it's gonna use that. That's pretty much everything that you need to know about, objects and classes in Python. This is just as easy as that, honestly. Like, this is object-oriented programming. It's just like very cool to look at. It's very neat and clean. And yeah, that's about it. Let me know if you had any questions in the comment. I'd be more than happy to answer. And make sure that you subscribe for the next videos. Thank you for watching us, and see you in the next video. Bye bye and take care.